The crowd gasped. The American tourist lay sprawled on the ground, his breath heavy, his dignity in shambles. Towering over him, the Queen's Guard's horse stood firm, its massive hoof just inches from crushing his leg. Then, a flash of steel, a gleaming saber unsheathed in one swift motion, and a voice, sharp and commanding, sliced through the tense silence. "Stand back from the horse!" Cameras flickered, phones zoomed in. The world seemed to pause. But what happened next became a global sensation. London. As usual, tourists crowded in front of Buckingham Palace. Cameras clicked, mouths hung open in awe, and children tugged at their parents' sleeves, begging to see the famous royal guards in their red uniforms and towering bearskin hats. The guards stood motionless, like statues carved from stone, embodying the prim and proper discipline of Britain. But amidst this cultural spectacle, he stood out. A tall, lanky man in his 40s, clad in an obnoxiously bright Hawaiian shirt, a white tank top stained with some kind of sauce, and questionable ripped jeans. His filthy sneakers suggested a man who had survived countless pub crawls, and his battered red baseball cap, emblazoned with "Make America Great Again," sat on his head like the cherry on top of a disastrous sundae. In one hand, he held a plastic cup with the last sad remnants of warm beer sloshing around. In the other, he gripped his phone, poised to capture his great moment for social media. The unmistakable stench of alcohol clung to him, as if centuries-old ale was fermenting in his stomach. "Y'all, this horse looks so serious. I bet it needs a hat," he suddenly hollered, shattering the solemn reverence for tradition. Several heads turned in his direction. People blinked, struggling to process. Did that really just happen? But the tourist was in full form. He chuckled and winked at his companion, a petite blonde in absurdly short shorts and a tight top featuring the American flag. Her name was Cindy, and judging by her wide, glassy eyes and the complete lack of focus in her pupils, her blood alcohol level was also on a steady rise. She squealed, clapping her hands together like she had just seen a puppy in someone's pocket. "Yeah, babe, put the hat on the horse." Her voice rang out over the crowd like an emergency siren, drawing even more attention to the unfolding disaster. The crowd held its breath. Someone pulled out their phone. Someone nervously whispered, "He wouldn't..." But of course he would. The American took a deep breath and attempted to straighten up. His body swayed slightly, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but he managed to steady himself. With the solemnity of a knight heading into his final battle, he slowly removed his baseball cap and, wobbling, took a step toward the Royal Guard's horse. Silence fell. A tense, ominous silence, the kind that precedes a storm. The horse, majestic and as black as British tradition itself, stood calmly, though its ears flicked slightly, sensing the approaching threat of beer-breath turbulence. And then, the moment of truth. The American lifted his cap, reached out, and... The crowd froze. Somewhere, a camera clicked, and then everything went wrong. "This channel won't survive without your subscription and likes. Help me!" The Guardsman was a young man, his face cold and expressionless like a marble statue. Beneath the towering bearskin hat, sharp eyes remained steady, betraying not a single flicker of emotion as the swaying American approached. The scene resembled a duel. On one side, centuries of British discipline. On the other, pure chaos, fueled by gallons of cheap beer. The tourist, wobbling slightly, raised his worn-out red cap. His movements were slow, as if trying to tame a wild beast, completely unaware that he was the beast in this scenario. "Just hold still, buddy," he muttered, focusing every ounce of his drunken determination on the horse's head. Someone in the crowd sucked in a sharp breath. A few people raised their phones, sensing an impending disaster worthy of viral fame. And they didn't have to wait long. As soon as the cap neared its mane, the black stallion jerked its head back with sudden force. The tourist staggered, but wasn't deterred. Instead of backing off, he made a critical mistake. He reached for the horse's ear. "Whoa! Easy, boy! Let me just—" Wham! Something snapped. Something flew through the air. And then, absolute chaos. The horse reared up, letting out a loud, indignant neigh, as if it had just been asked to work on its day off. And that was all it took for the American's world to turn upside down, literally. With the force of a medieval catapult, the powerful animal whipped its head, sending the tourist flying backward like a rag doll hurled by an angry toddler. Thud! The heavy impact of his body hitting the pavement echoed through the square. His plastic beer cup tumbled from his grip, its final drops of stale ale spilling directly onto the polished boots of the Guardsman. The crowd gasped in unison. Cameras shook. Some people screamed with laughter, while others clapped hands over their mouths, realizing that someone had just insulted an entire monarchy. And through it all, the royal guard remained motionless, a statue carved from red wool and sheer British restraint. But if one could read his thoughts, they would likely be flashing in bold red letters. Don't move, don't laugh. This is not your problem. The horse exhaled sharply as if to say, I warned you. And the tourist lay flat on his back, staring up at the sky. His cap had landed beside him, and on his face was the unmistakable expression of a man experiencing a deep existential crisis. But the show wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Just silence. For a moment, no one moved. The crowd, which just moments ago had been laughing and recording what seemed like hilarious content, now stood frozen in tense anticipation. The only sound breaking the eerie stillness was the soft drip of spilled beer trickling down the guard's pristine boots. Lying on his back, the American slowly raised his hands, as if unsure whether he was still alive. His cap lay beside him, and his eyes darted around, assessing just how badly he had screwed up. But instead of coming to his senses, he simply snorted, flashing a lopsided, drunken grin. Whoa, easy there, buddy. No need to get all British about it. The crowd stirred again. Someone let out a nervous chuckle. Someone else muttered a curse. Somewhere a TikTok upload was already in progress under the caption, Idiot Tourist versus Queen's Guard, gone wrong. But the real problem? The horse wasn't done yet. It happened in a fraction of a second. The stallion snapped its head forward, its reins pulling taut. A massive hoof slammed down, landing a mere inch from the tourist's foot with a heavy, menacing thud. The crowd screamed. The tourist jerked his legs back, nearly rolling onto his back again. For the first time, genuine fear flickered in his eyes. Perhaps this was the moment he realized his joke had gone too far. And that's when the guardsman took his first sharp step forward. Metal clicked. The crowd gasped. A sword, sudden, gleaming, and terrifyingly sharp, was now in the guard's hand. His voice, booming and authoritative, rang through the square. Stand back from the horse! Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a water bottle dropped to the ground. Even the loudest tourist, the one who had just been yelling, Yo, this is crazy, was now gripping his phone in stunned silence. And then, Cindy made everything worse. Instead of helping her boyfriend avoid an international incident, she whipped out her phone, shoving it directly toward the guard. Oh my God, babe, that guard is pulling a weapon on you. This is police brutality, she shrieked, as if she had just walked onto the set of a Shakespearean tragedy. The crowd groaned. Someone face-palmed. Someone else was already drafting a Twitter post. But Cindy? Cindy didn't care. You can't do that. We have rights. The American suddenly chimed in, as if he had just discovered his inner freedom fighter. At last he staggered to his feet, still swaying, but now with indignation burning in his expression. He didn't like that he had just been humiliated by a British horse, and now he needed someone else to blame. The crowd erupted. Some people yelled that the tourist had brought it upon himself. Others insisted it was just a joke. And then there were those who simply stood back, filming every second of the unfolding disaster. But the Guardsman never moved. He didn't flinch under the weight of the crowd's reactions. He didn't let emotions creep into his stance. Instead, he simply turned his gaze to the American, calm, cold, unwavering, and said in a voice like sharpened steel, "You are under arrest." Panic. The crowd erupted into chaos. Shouting, ringing phones, camera flashes, it all blended into a single deafening roar. In the distance, Buckingham Palace security was already moving in, their strides purposeful, their faces unreadable. "Cindy?" Cindy screamed even louder. "Babe! Run!" But it was too late. Somewhere in the drunken fog of his mind, a warning bell finally rang. He had screwed up. Big time. The Red Sea parted, but instead of Moses, two massive British police officers emerged from the chaos. With the ease of men who had seen it all before, they swiftly grabbed the tourist, twisting his arms behind his back. "Hey, hey, I didn't do anything," he whined, thrashing helplessly as they dragged him through the crowd. But London's police didn't play stupid games. The two officers held him like a particularly disappointing Amazon Prime package, not a grown man who had just tried to put a hat on a royal horse. And Cindy? Cindy refused to go down quietly. She darted around them, waving her phone like an enraged contestant on a reality show. "This is a human rights violation. Babe, I'm getting everything on camera." The crowd was eating this up. Phones were filming from every conceivable angle. TikTok comment sections were already ablaze. Reddit threads were exploding with titles like "Dumbest American Ever" and "When You Mess with the Queen's Guard." But the grand finale was yet to come. The viral explosion. Nothing spreads faster on the internet than sheer stupidity. 1 hour later, the first clips of the hat incident TM had hit Twitter. #Horsegate was trending worldwide. TikTok views had already hit 50,000. 3 hours later, YouTube was flooded with videos titled, "American Tourist Gets Owned by Queen's Guard." Memes of the tourist mid-fall were everywhere. Brits and Americans were already at war in the comment sections. 5 hours later, BBC broke the news. An American tourist has been fined £5,000 and deported after attempting to place a hat on a Queen's Guard horse. The incident, now known as #Horsegate, has sparked international debate. The news anchor struggled to keep a straight face. And now we turn to our expert for legal insight. A very serious British analyst in a suit, looking as if he deeply regretted his life choices, sighed before beginning his analysis. The return of the hero. The next day, the American landed back in the U.S., disheveled, humiliated, but still unapologetic. And the first thing he did? An interview. Standing in front of a local news camera, he shook his head in righteous indignation. "They treat their horses better than people. I'm never going back to England." The reporter nearly dropped the mic. The internet collectively lost its mind. And the cherry on top? The very same red "Make America Great Again" cap that he had tried to place on the horse, found and auctioned off for $10,000. New listing, the legendary hat that made history. Official description, worn by an idiot who got arrested in London. And just like that, a simple tourist trip became an international legend. And the horse? The horse still stood in front of Buckingham Palace, and if it could, it probably would have just sighed and rolled its eyes.